Arthur was born ugly. I was forced to marry him, yet I detested him to the core. It wasn't until I was kidnapped, and the kidnappers wanted me to kill him. He took the knife and stabbed himself in the heart. Only then did I realize the depth of his love for me. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the year we got married. I ran to him, choked up, and said, "Honey, I missed you, hug me." His face stiffened slightly, his eyes dimmed. "What trick are you playing this time?" Chapter 1. The last memory of the previous life. It was Arthur coughing up blood, yet still smiling at me, saying, "Summer, I love you, live on well." The kidnappers were after his life from the start. They took the ransom, but held a gun to the back of my head, forcing me to kill Arthur. Arthur didn't hesitate for a moment. He took the knife and plunged it into his own heart, his gaze resolute. His usually repugnant face shone in the sunset. But in the end, I still died. Before I could see who it was, consciousness faded into darkness. When I opened my eyes again, a warm breeze brushed my face. I saw everything around me through a nearby mirror. I was back home. A message popped up on my phone, interrupting my thoughts. It was Barton. My childhood friend, now a famous pianist. "Summer, you probably didn't accompany Arthur to the charity banquet, did you? Why not come with me?" I snapped out of my shock. Quickly checked the date on the calendar. Then my heart suddenly clenched. I was reborn. Back to the year I had just married Arthur. Chapter 2. On this day in the past life, it was our first formal dinner after getting married. He had specially tailored a fishtail gown for me. It suited my figure well. But before we left, I received a call from my dad. He said Arthur had given another lucrative project to him. He asked me to be extra nice to Arthur and to quickly have a child for the Harris family. I was inexplicably furious. In reality, there were issues with the financial chain of my family's group, and we didn't necessarily have to marry into the Harris family. But the conditions Arthur offered were truly tempting, and my parents almost immediately agreed. For this reason, I always felt he was taking advantage of the situation. I already detested him to the core. And my dad's phone call made me feel like he was trying to force me into submission with money. I immediately argued with him. "Arthur, I will never like a scheming ugly freak like you, you can forget about it." In my anger, I accepted Barton's invitation. I appeared with him at the banquet, embarrassing Arthur, who should have attended with his wife. He became the laughingstock of the entire circle. Even hot searches speculated about my divorce with him. Ding. Another message popped up on WeChat. "Barton, Summer, why are you ignoring me? Do you want me to come pick you up?" I immediately came to my senses. Rejected Barton. Quickly did my makeup, changed into a dress, and went out. This time, I won't let Arthur get hurt again. Chapter 3. Arriving at the banquet hall. I immediately saw Arthur. Tall stature, remarkable temperament. Unfortunately, a brown birthmark marred the left side of his face, ruining his appearance. For some reason, his confession from the previous life echoed in my mind again. My eyes welled with tears. Suddenly, a few harsh words reached my ears. "President Arthur, I'll be blunt, Summer has been beautiful since she was young, with plenty of handsome guys following her around. She didn't fancy many, let alone you. People are visual creatures, especially in this world where looks dominate. President Arthur will just have to bear with it. In a marriage based on money, President Arthur should be more open-minded." Arthur lowered his head slightly, looking uncomfortable. I lifted my skirt and ran up to him. Gazing at his stunned face, I choked up. "Honey, I missed you, hug me." Arthur stared at me in disbelief. Those few outspoken individuals just now had even uglier expressions on their faces. They didn't expect me to show up here. Nor did they anticipate me saying such cheesy words to Arthur. After all, my dissatisfaction with this marriage was very evident before my rebirth. Everyone knew I despised Arthur. That's why they dared to mock Arthur so casually just now. Because it's the truth. As the person involved, Arthur naturally understood even more. At this moment, he stood in place. His expression slightly stiff, his gaze dim. After a while, he coldly asked, "What kind of trick are you playing this time?" My eyes reddened again. Thinking about my past life, I really wasn't good to Arthur. Not only was I distant and indifferent towards him, but I also often showed my temper inappropriately, embarrassing him. The few times I tried to be kinder to him, I was actually planning to deceive him into divorcing me. At this moment, he probably remembered all of this, as well as the way I scolded him in front of the servants before he left. Damn it! Why didn't I get reborn at an earlier time? As I hesitated to speak, a mocking voice came from across the crowd. Chapter 4. Summer, I thought you despised Arthur for valuing money over people? What's this, suddenly finding him handsome? Laughter erupted around us. This person was Arthur's arch-rival, Kyle. Unable to compete with him in business, he often attacked Arthur from other angles. In my previous life, when I came with Barton, he was the one who mocked Arthur the most. Thinking about this, I snatched the glass of red wine from Arthur's hand and splashed it towards Kyle's face. Summer, are you crazy? Kyle wiped the wine off his face, then walked towards me menacingly. A waiter hurriedly brought a towel for him to wipe himself with. He wiped his face haphazardly and threw the towel on the ground. His eyes glared as if he wanted to pierce me. Your mouth is filthy, let me clean it for you. Kyle loosened his tie, gritting his teeth, raising his hand. You bitch. Before he could finish his sentence, his hand suspended in the air was restrained by someone. It was Arthur. He glared at Kyle, his furrowed brow twisting his birthmark. Touch her, are you looking to die? My heart skipped a beat. My nose involuntarily tingled with emotion. Arthur was just like in my previous life. Whenever it involved me, he was prone to losing control. Kyle struggled unwillingly and continued to speak ill. Arthur, you're ugly, Summer hates you. What did I say wrong? I was just... Smack! I cut off his words with a slap. Everyone was stunned. The scene fell into a sudden silence. After a moment, Kyle regained his senses. Summer, you dare hit me? He tried to retaliate but was held back by Arthur, unable to move. I glanced sideways at him, my voice icy. If you speak ill of my husband, I will hit you. Arthur looked stunned, his eyes briefly brightening before dimming again. Let go of me. Kyle shouted at Arthur. For this bitch, Arthur, you will die by her hands sooner or later. Arthur released him, and Kyle turned to leave. Stop. I sternly commanded. Apologize to my husband. Arthur's eyes showed a hint of turmoil again. Kyle impatiently glanced at Arthur, then glared at me. Summer, don't go too far. Apologizing for a mistake, even elementary school kids understand that courtesy. Does CEO Kyle not understand? Perhaps out of respect for Arthur, Kyle reluctantly said. I'm sorry. And then left the banquet hall with a face full of resentment. Watching his back, I thought about his earlier words. You will die by her hands sooner or later. Could it be that he was behind that kidnapping? The lights suddenly dimmed, and the host stepped onto the stage to announce the beginning of the auction session. Everyone dispersed. Arthur glanced at me, his expression somber. Summer had enough. Chapter 5. I wasn't causing trouble. I quickly climbed onto his shoulder and hugged his neck. You are my husband, I will protect you without question. Haven't you protected me too? Arthur's body tensed, his face blank. Just then, a beam of light swept over us, causing others to glance in our direction. Arthur quickly turned, pulling me close beneath him, leading me to his seat. Once seated, he tried to pull his hand away, but I firmly interlocked our fingers. I proudly waved them in front of him. The auction proceeded smoothly. Arthur didn't look my way again. Feeling emotional, I contemplated how to coax this stubborn mule. Suddenly, the host announced the next item up for auction, a limited edition men's cufflink. As the staff unveiled it, the dazzling diamonds on the cufflink immediately caught everyone's eye. The cleverly placed lights made it shine brilliantly. I glanced at Arthur, who seemed disinterested. I knew I had to get those cufflinks. This was my chance to break the ice. Thankfully, not many were willing to compete with me for such a frivolous item. After the third bid, I won it for $1 million. I was immersed in my own joy, not noticing Arthur's dark expression. After the event ended, I asked him to accompany me to collect the cufflinks, and he remained silent throughout. When the staff handed me the box and asked for payment, I nudged the indifferent Arthur with my finger. "Honey, pay up." Arthur furrowed his brow slightly, a hint of struggle in his eyes. Eventually, he silently swiped his card. Walking towards the parking lot, he didn't wait for me deliberately. I had to jog to keep up with him. These shoes were new and were starting to rub. By the time we got into the car, the back of my heel was already blistered. I complained stubbornly. "Why did you walk so fast?" I almost fell. Arthur's gaze turned dark and his voice strained. "Summer, you spent $1 million on this trinket for a man. Do I have to hold it without any dignity?" I bit my lip. "Arthur, you know it's a man's accessory, then why did I buy it?" He averted his gaze, looking desolate. "Give it to whichever man you please, no need to tell me." I slammed the gift box heavily on his chest. "It's for you, you stinky man." The atmosphere grew tense. Arthur's expression stiffened. Then a hint of panic showed. His voice trembling. "Did you bid on this to give it to me?" I looked out the window, voice annoyed. "Forget it, give it to the driver." The car suddenly jolted. The partition was then raised, enclosing me and Arthur in a darker space. The lights and shadows from the roadside trees intertwined, casting a soft light on Arthur's face. "Sorry, Summer, You're not wrong." My voice choked up. "It's my fault. I shouldn't have come tonight." Chapter 6. Reflecting on my rebirth, I was eager to get close to him. He remained indifferent. The pain in my feet spread to my heart. I couldn't help but cry. Arthur dared not touch me. His hand, so close to me, hung in the air, his voice restrained. "I'm sorry, Summer, I really didn't expect you would give me a gift." His words broke through my last defense. I simply burst into tears. Feeling wronged. Feeling wronged for Arthur. The various experiences of this life and the past flashed before my eyes like a slideshow. I was too bad. Even for such a common act between lovers like giving gifts, he couldn't bring himself to believe it. Why should I be mad at him? Suddenly, I turned and threw myself into Arthur's arms. "It's my fault, I shouldn't have treated you like that." After a while, his back received the comforting pats. "All right, stop crying." I pulled away from his chest and looked up. We had never been this close. I noticed for the first time. When his birthmark was shadowed, the other half of his face was remarkably handsome. Arthur felt awkward under my gaze. He looked away, trying to push me away. But I clung to him like a plaster, not moving an inch. I even had more daring thoughts. I grabbed Arthur's tie, my eyes aggressively fixed on his lips, getting closer and closer. "Don't do this, Summer." Arthur restrained himself, turning his face away. "I'm not as self-controlled as you think." I didn't hold back. Taking off my sandals, I knelt on the seat, forcefully pulling him in for a kiss. But just as we were about to touch lips, he turned his head, only landing a kiss on the corner of his mouth. Pouting, tears welled up in my eyes. "Arthur, do you not like me anymore?" He stiffened for a moment, a brief look of confusion in his eyes. As if mustering great courage, he lightly lifted my chin, leaning in. "Summer, look closely, who am I?" "Arthur, my husband." Seizing the opportunity, I cupped his face, showering him with kisses. Taken aback by this sudden kiss, he was dazed. I stared at his bewildered face, about to speak, but my waist was gripped by his large hand. Summer, you've provoked me, now you can't escape. Chapter 7. At first, I didn't understand what Arthur meant by this. It wasn't until things escalated beyond my expectations. That's when it dawned on me. In my past life, Arthur and I were either fighting or disgusted with each other. There was no intimacy. I never expected him, who seemed so aloof and dignified, to be so unprovoked. As his hand trailed down the side of my skirt, I quickly stopped him, covering his mouth with my fingers. Wait, Arthur, calm down. I glanced at the front seats, trying to signal that there were other people around. But he misunderstood. He moved aside. The previous passion was completely gone. What, can't keep up the act anymore? I stared back at him in surprise. Act? Did he still think I was insincere? I haven't. Arthur tidied up his messy clothes, speaking calmly. Summer, you said it yourself, you would never like someone like me, a freak. You made it clear, didn't you? My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand. Yes, I said that. Arthur closed his eyes. Tell me, what do you want by doing all this? As long as I can, I'll fulfill your desires. Except for divorce. Tears blurred my eyes as I spoke with a sob. Arthur, I won't divorce, I like you now, I really like you. Eager to prove my sincerity, I leaned towards Arthur. But I moved too quickly and accidentally hit my heel. The pain made me furrow my brows slightly. Arthur keenly noticed it. He reached out and caught my ankle, placing it in his palm. Carefully and considerately, he applied a band-aid to my heel. Once he was done, I quickly pulled my foot back. No wonder you didn't believe me. You wouldn't have bought such cute band-aids for yourself, right? Arthur calmly finished tidying up the trash, sitting back properly. Well, I saw you using them before, so I bought some just in case. Didn't expect they would come in handy one day. A wave of bitterness and sorrow engulfed me. I curled up in the corner. Arthur, let's live well together. Chapter 8. Arthur looked bewildered. His eyes showed a mix of emotions that were hard to decipher. His thin lips parted slightly. Just as he was about to speak, the car suddenly braked. Both of us leaned forward involuntarily. He quickly grabbed me, sternly reprimanding the driver. The driver hurriedly apologized. Sorry, Arthur, someone suddenly darted out in front, so I had to brake suddenly. Arthur glanced coldly, his expression turning icy. He ignored me and got out of the car directly. I then noticed we were almost in the garage at home. I followed to pull the car door. As my hand touched the handle, the door opened automatically, revealing a face with stunning features. Barton? He smiled warmly, reaching out his hand politely. Princess, please get out of the car. I stiffened my expression and avoided his hand. What are you doing here? As I came out, I saw Arthur standing on the other side of the car, looking at me indifferently. My heart skipped a beat. So, his change in expression earlier was because he saw Barton? After the banquet in my past life, Arthur had asked me if I liked Barton. At that time, I was hoping for a divorce with him, so I didn't explain and let him misunderstand. This time, I didn't go with Barton, ignoring the barrier he posed between Arthur and me. Seeing Arthur's increasingly cold gaze, I tried to approach Barton to explain, but he grabbed my wrist. Summer, don't you have something for me? What thing? Barton casually glanced at Arthur and smiled gently. Didn't you take a cufflink picture for me? As Barton finished speaking, a gift box was thrown in front of us. I followed his gaze. Arthur was looking at me mockingly. The birthmark on his face seemed even darker due to embarrassment and anger. No, it's not. I denied anxiously. Who said that cufflink was bought for you? I bought it too. All right, Summer. Barton seemed to understand everything. If you want to redeem the cufflink for me, you should have informed me beforehand. That thing is not worth $1 million. I felt like my world was crashing down. You said that cufflink is yours? Chapter 9. I only wanted to take a gift to please Arthur. But I neglected the fact that some items at tonight's auction were actually belongings of celebrities. Sold anonymously. After the auction, Arthur left in a huff, and I forgot to verify the specifics of this item. This is a disaster. From Arthur's irritated and angry eyes, I could tell he probably thought tonight's events were all part of me playing with him. He withdrew his gaze and quickly walked away. I quickly bent down to pick up the gift box. Barton, I really didn't know this belonged to you. I didn't bid for it to give to you. It's late, I'll go home first. Barton's smile suddenly turned dark. Summer, what's wrong with you? You've always hated Arthur and wanted to get away from him, right? Why are you in such a hurry to leave today? Did he threaten you with your family's company? Guilt flooded my heart. These were all ideas I had instilled in Barton before my rebirth. So, I shook my head desperately. Barton, Arthur has been good to me. It was my fault before. Now, I want to live well with him. A look of astonishment crossed Barton's face. Summer, you really want to be with that ugly monster? Barton. My interruption startled him, freezing his expression. Don't speak about him like that again. Otherwise, we won't be friends anymore. After speaking, I ignored Barton and hurriedly ran back home. The living room light was on, but Arthur was nowhere to be seen. I slowly walked upstairs and found my way to the study. Through a crack, I saw Arthur standing lonely by the window, smoking. Suddenly, I remembered the night from my past life when I didn't come home and found the maid cleaning the room with a full ashtray from the study. Arthur, I called out softly. His hand holding the cigarette paused, but he didn't turn around. I walked up to him and handed him the gift box. Arthur, things are not as you think. I swear I didn't know this belonged to Barton. I just wanted to give you a gift to make you happy. The swirling smoke made me frown. He stubbed out the cigarette. Happy? Summer, you use my money to buy his secondhand goods and give them to me, and you expect me to be happy? Arthur snatched the gift box and casually tossed it into the trash. Chapter 10. That was worth $1 million. Instinctively, I wanted to pick it up, but Arthur grabbed me and lifted me up. Summer, causing so much trouble tonight, what exactly do you want to do? How far do you want to embarrass me? Indeed, Arthur's misunderstanding of me runs deep. Remembering the unfinished business in the car before, I crashed into Arthur's arms. I didn't, Arthur. I really want to be good to you, to be with you. His body stiffened. No response for a while. I shamelessly unbuttoned his shirt, one by one, reaching out to touch his abdominal muscles. Husband. Arthur trembled as if struck by lightning, silently meeting my gaze. Summer, do you know what you're doing? Of course I do. Before I could finish speaking, I was lifted into the air, held by Arthur and placed on the desk. He grasped my chin, deliberately placing my face with a birthmark in the bright light. Looking somewhat fierce. I couldn't help but shiver, timidly saying, Husband, please don't do this. How? Are you scared? Arthur's tone was cold. Didn't you say you want to be together? Can you be with me properly looking like this? I bit my lip, embracing his neck tightly. Husband, you can't scare me. I like you, no matter what you look like. Arthur looked bewildered. While he was still collecting himself, I leaned in and kissed him. I saw surprise, joy, and excitement flicker in his eyes before he closed them and deepened the kiss, firmly holding the back of my neck. After a passionate release, I lay on Arthur's shoulder as he carried me back to the bedroom. He stroked my hair, kissing my cheek. There was a lingering doubt in his eyes. Summer, can I ask you a question? I snuggled up and lightly pecked his chin. Are you asking why I suddenly changed? Arthur nodded. I wrapped my arms around his waist. Then let me ask you, if I were kidnapped right now, and the kidnappers wanted your money and your life, what would you do? Give it to them. Arthur's tone was nonchalant. But if you do that, you'll die. Aren't you young and promising? Don't you think that's a waste? Arthur kissed me, showing deep affection between his lips. You are worth all my sacrifices. My tears wet Arthur's chest. That's the reason I changed. Arthur, you really died for me. I explained the ending of our past lives to him. His eyes darkened slightly. So, Summer, you don't like me, you're just repaying a debt, right? Chapter 11. When I first came back after reincarnation, I also thought about this question. Until I saw Arthur intact. My heart pounded like a drum. The excitement and throbbing couldn't be faked. He saved me, and I should indeed repay him. But I also truly fell in love with him. I pushed Arthur down suddenly, climbing on top of him. Arthur, listen carefully, I like you, for no reason at all. I will never leave you in this lifetime. A passionate kiss followed, and Arthur immediately took the lead. He held me, intertwining eagerly. After things settled down again, he rested on my neck, his voice tinged with sadness. Summer, I believe you this time. But if you ever deceive me, please just keep deceiving me. Tears welled up, and I held onto this man tightly. I won't deceive you. I will never deceive you again. The next morning, I was awakened by sunlight peeking through the curtains. Instinctively reaching out beside me. But all I felt was the cold bedsheet. Opening one eye halfway, I saw no sign of Arthur on the bed. Dejectedly, I propped myself up on my sore body. Did we really go all the way last night? Just as I worried about how to appease him, the bathroom door opened, and Arthur emerged, drying his hair. He was shirtless, only wrapped in a simple towel. His fair skin cut into distinct muscular lines. I couldn't help but swallow, pretending to be embarrassed as I covered my eyes with my hand, peeking through the gaps. You're not leaving? Arthur walked over, opening my fingers. Don't want to see me? I shyly glanced at his abs. Why would I not want to see you? I met his gentle gaze with a lifted face. I always felt that Arthur was a bit different today. Suddenly, the phone rang. The screen displayed Barton. Oh no. I hadn't had the chance to change it yet. Glancing back at Arthur, his brows furrowed, looking resentful. Hey, don't be like that, it's not like I asked him to call. But then, in the next moment, I got a reality check. Barton, what's up? Barton's voice sounded somewhat aggrieved. Summer, did you forget? You promised to accompany me on the tour in the capital, and we agreed to go buy some daily necessities today? I smacked my forehead. Damn, this was actually happening. I had agreed when things weren't good with Arthur before. Now, of course, I couldn't go. Chapter 12. Sorry, Barton, I have something going on, I can't make it. There was a heavy sigh on the other end of the phone. Hello, are you listening?
Yeah.
Barton inquired. Summer, you're not still mad at me for last night, are you? You and Arthur. We're good. I stood on the bed, fidgeting with Arthur's clothes uneasily. Suddenly, Arthur grabbed my waist. His face drew closer, his breath deepening.
Bye.
Barton, we'll talk another time. After hanging up, I used my fist to push Arthur away. Hey, don't be silly, even the most robust donkey from the production team can't handle this much. He tilted my head, his voice unforgiving. Wasn't it your own doing? Unable to retort, I was overwhelmed by his forceful affection. I scolded him outwardly, but in my heart, it was sweeter than honey. This life, everything finally seemed to be back on track. Except for the unsolved kidnapping case. As I recalled the chilling sight of the blade piercing Arthur's heart, I was suffocating in pain. I couldn't let the tragedy repeat. I didn't want to lose Arthur. So, I became Arthur's personal secretary. To keep an eye out for any suspicious individuals around him. We are inseparable. Only one thing left to do together. That day, I stood outside the men's room waiting for him. As a few colleagues passed by, sneaking glances at me, it was so embarrassing. On the way back to the office, I pushed Arthur to walk ahead, covering my face with my hand. Hurry up, embarrassing us to death. He seemed to be enjoying himself. They're just envious, how is that embarrassing? Just then, I overheard some discussions. The CEO Arthur and his wife are so close, can't be apart for a moment. I never thought the usually cold CEO Arthur was actually a romantic. Isn't his wife always working here? Please ask her to come often, the CEO Arthur's temper has softened recently. Arthur's smile faded, his expression serious. Who said those things? Step forward. His voice was cold, hinting at anger. Who would dare to admit it? I quietly hooked my finger behind his back, signaling him to let it go. But he held my hand briefly, then let go, repeating his question. A supervisor came over to defuse the situation. Sorry, CEO Arthur, don't be angry, I will investigate and harshly criticize them. Criticize? Arthur raised an eyebrow. That means dismissal? Arthur grinned. How can that be? I was actually planning to give them a raise, since no one is admitting, let's forget it and have afternoon tea together. I was shocked. Everyone else was shocked too. CEO Arthur, it was me who said your relationship with your wife is good. I was the one who called you a romantic. CEO Arthur, how about a little raise in salary? CEO Arthur, you and your wife are lovey-dovey for eternity. Chapter 13. Things had been calm for a long time. Just when I thought that maybe my rebirth had changed many choices and perhaps altered the kidnapping incident, the Harris Group's project in City H ran into trouble. Arthur needed to handle it. I was in a panic. In my previous life, I was kidnapped while Arthur was on a business trip to City H. He rushed back to save me. No time to investigate, just took the money and went alone. Leading to a tragic end. Watching Arthur pack his bags, I ran up to hug him, my voice hoarse. Do you really have to go? Can't someone else go instead? Arthur lowered his head and kissed me. He smoothed my hair, comforting me like a small cat. Be good, I'll only be gone for 3 days, I'll be back soon. I buried my head in his chest, acting spoiled. I can't stand even a day. Unless I go too. I had never been so unreasonable before. Arthur took my hand, as if remembering something. Are you worried about that kidnapping incident? I nodded vigorously, yes. It happened in our past life after you went to City H. Although the timing and the project don't match now, I don't dare to take any chances. I've finally been able to be with you again, I don't want to lose that. He held me tightly, his cool lips against my forehead. It won't happen. Trust me. In the end, I went to City H with Arthur. The first 2 days passed peacefully. The company's matters were also handled smoothly. At night, after taking a shower, I sat on the edge of the bed checking my phone. Suddenly, I received a WeChat message from Barton. Chapter 14. It had been a long time since we last contacted each other after I refused to accompany him on the tour. Barton, Summer, are you in City H? Me, how did you know? Barton, heard that your husband Arthur is here, just wanted to ask you. Me, what's up? Barton sent a voice message. Summer, I'm performing in City H, tomorrow night is the last show, then I'll be going abroad for a while, won't be back for a long time, can you come see me? Arthur happened to come out of the bathroom and overheard. Feeling guilty, I quickly turned off my phone and greeted him with a smile. Barton? Unexpectedly, he didn't avoid the topic.
Yeah.
He said he's performing here and invited us to watch. Arthur awkwardly smiled. He invited you to watch, right? I leaned my head against his chest and coquettishly said. Oh, what's the difference? Wherever we are now, aren't we together? All right. Arthur poked my head with his fingertips. He's your friend, if you want to go, go. I stared at him blankly, not saying a word. What's wrong? He unconsciously touched his face. Don't move. I removed his hand and greedily cupped his face. Honey, I've noticed you've become more handsome recently. He chuckled lightly. Summer, you don't have to lie if you want to go watch the show. I'm serious. I had already noticed the change in him, and today I finally figured it out. I pulled him to sit in front of the mirror, pointing at the birthmark on his face. Don't you think it has faded a lot? Taking my cue, Arthur examined it closely. It does seem to have lightened a bit. I remembered, in our past life, Arthur didn't have this change. Until he died, that birthmark was deeply imprinted on his left cheek. So, was this change because of me? I hugged him with joy. If I guessed right, then I would have to love him doubly. Chapter 15. Arthur accompanied me to see Barton's performance. We sat in the best viewing area he arranged. He held the large bouquet of chrysanthemums we got for Barton, looking odd. First time sending flowers to a rival. I linked my arm with his, leaning on his shoulder. I've told you many times, Barton and I are just ordinary friends. Arthur teased. You may see him as an ordinary friend, but he might not. I playfully pinched him. You're just jealous, I see no cure for you. I'm beyond help, and you don't care? Arthur pretended to be pitiful. When did you get sick? He said seriously. Wasn't it you who said I was beyond help? I was momentarily at a loss for words. At that moment, the music started, and the entire place fell silent. Barton slowly walked onto the stage. I remembered when he said he wanted to be a pianist in junior high. Congratulations to him for achieving that, and he's doing exceptionally well. Out of the corner of my eye, I glanced at the man beside me. In terms of appearance, even if we remove the birthmark, he still falls slightly short compared to Barton. But love, it's such an unreasonable thing. What's wrong? Arthur wiped away tears I hadn't even noticed with his fingertips. I squeezed his hand tightly. Arthur, I love you. He was momentarily stunned, then his eyes softened. Summer, I love you too. After the performance ended, we went backstage to find Barton. They were in a meeting, so we stood outside waiting. During that time, I went to the bathroom, leaving Arthur waiting in his spot. When I came out, I saw a crowd gathered at the door of the meeting room. What a pity, the pianist's hands are ruined, his life is over. I heard someone pushed him when the chandelier fell. Didn't they say online that the person he liked married someone else? Could it be a crime of passion? Listening to these baseless rumors, my mind was a mess. I pushed through the crowd and rushed in. Chrysanthemums were scattered all over the floor. Not far away, a huge chandelier was pressing down on Barton's half-arm. His face contorted in pain. And Arthur stood opposite him, fists clenched, with an indifferent expression. Chapter 16. What happened? I grabbed Arthur's hand, anxiously asking. He was about to speak when Barton's groans interrupted. Summer, I'm in so much pain. Summer, my hand, will it be crippled? Despair filled his eyes. I didn't know what to say, all I could do was reassure him. It won't be, with medical advancements today, it can be cured. Just as I said that, several medical personnel hurriedly approached and carried Barton away. On the way back to the hotel, Arthur remained silent, seemingly lost in thought. Once we were in the room, I asked softly. Can you tell me what happened? Arthur stared at me intently. Summer, do you believe me? Of course. I answered decisively. He sighed lightly and said gravely. As soon as you left, the door opened, I went in thinking of giving the flowers to Barton for you, but he refused, asked me in a very unfriendly manner why I came. I didn't want to waste words with him, so I forcefully handed him the flowers. In the scuffle, the chandelier came crashing down. At that moment, I tried to pull him towards me, but he resisted and was hit by the light. However, Arthur hesitated and looked at me. But what? He pursed his lips. But before he pulled his body back, he glanced upwards. I widened my eyes in disbelief. Are you saying Barton did it on purpose? I can't be sure, but there is this suspicion. But why would he do that? You see, he is a pianist, and his hands are crucial to him. He even mentioned to me about getting insurance for his hands before. Why would he intentionally destroy them? Arthur sighed. Maybe I'm overthinking. He patted my head. Go take a bath and rest. Before going to sleep, there was a knock on the door. It was the police. Someone pointed out that they saw Arthur and Barton arguing. The police also found evidence of tampering with the chain of the chandelier. So now they needed Arthur to cooperate with the investigation. Chapter 17. I was restless in the hotel. Does this mean they suspect Arthur of intentionally harming Barton? After much contemplation, I took a taxi to the hospital. Outside the operating room, Barton's colleague Verna was waiting, her expression grave. In a past life, she was very kind to Barton. Everyone could see that she liked Barton, except for Barton pretending not to notice. Verna glanced over and, upon seeing me, her eyes flashed with hostility as she angrily approached me. What are you here for? Isn't it enough that you've harmed him like this? Passing doctors and nurses intervened to separate us. She cried and accused me of being the culprit. I don't understand what you're talking about. I didn't harm Barton. Wiping away tears, Verna's voice still carried anger. Not you, but your man did. He envied your childhood friendship with Barton and used such despicable means to ruin his future. With no hands, how will he play the piano in the future? That's impossible. I immediately refuted Verna's claims. Verna sneered. Barton clearly said it was Arthur who pushed him. Can he still falsely accuse Arthur? The argument continued, and the lights in the operating room went out. The doctor came out and sighed. The patient injured a critical nerve, underwent surgery, but it will be challenging to recover to the same level as before. Verna grabbed the doctor excitedly. What do you mean? Can he still play the piano? The doctor hesitated. He can, but to what extent, it's hard to say. Shortly after, Barton was wheeled out. On the hospital bed, he blended with the plain hospital gown, looking weak and haggard. Verna drove me out of the ward. Filled with doubts, I didn't stay long and returned to the hotel. Coincidentally, I ran into a tired-looking Arthur downstairs. I hurriedly went up to him and hugged him tightly. Chapter 18. The police suspect you did it? Closing the hotel room door, I cut to the chase. You already know? Arthur didn't seem surprised. Then you should also know who told the police, right? Barton. Arthur rubbed his forehead. His colleague exaggerated things to the police about the relationships between the three of us. He adamantly claimed that I pushed him, leading to the accident. Thanks to him, we can't leave for the time being. I comforted him. It's just a delay, anyway. It wasn't you who did it. Arthur playfully pinched my chin. You trust me that much? Of course. I leaned in and kissed him. Going to see his performance was a spontaneous decision. You didn't have time to harm him. Besides, the motive doesn't make sense. Wait. Motive? A light bulb went off in my head. Try to find out Barton's financial situation and whether he actually bought insurance. Do you suspect he was trying to scam the insurance? I'm not ruling out that possibility, although I hope it's not true. Someone intentionally leaked the information online. Rumors about the close relationship between Arthur's wife and the pianist Barton flooded the internet. Arthur looks like a ghost. His wife has eyes for someone else, and he blames others for it. Killing someone over this is outrageous. Thinking money gives you the right to do as you please? I suggest punishing the murderer severely and eradicating capital. The more I read, the angrier I got. I was about to reply with a few words, but Arthur snatched my phone away. No need to stoop to their level. When the truth comes out, these people will naturally shut up. Seeing the tired look on his face, I gently touched foreheads with him. No matter what happens, I'll be by your side. Chapter 19. I was woken up by a phone call in the morning, still groggy. Summer, where are you? Why haven't you come to see me? As soon as I heard Barton's voice, I instantly woke up. Is Verna not there? I came yesterday. You were still asleep. I'm awake now, and I'm alone. Can you come over? I glanced at Arthur beside me. Then you wait for me a moment. After hanging up, Arthur lazily rolled over. I cuddled up to him. Feeling jealous? Not at all. I turned to face him, holding his face. There are some things I want to clarify face to face, nothing more. Arthur rubbed my nape gently, his expression tender. Understood, I'll take you. Entering the hospital room. The dejected Barton suddenly perked up. Summer, sit here. He patted the edge of the bed. Instead, I pulled a chair from the side and sat down. Summer, why do you seem unhappy? Barton asked. I looked sharply at him. Barton, from middle school till now, I've always considered you my good friend. His expression stiffened. I feel the same. Then why did you lie? Why did you let people tell the police that Arthur harmed you? A flash of panic crossed Barton's eyes, and he chuckled lightly. Summer, is he more important to you now than I am? You believe anything he says, but not me, is that it? I only believe in facts. He was with me the whole day, never had a chance to tamper with the chandelier. Barton sneered. He could have paid someone else to do it. He's the one who pushed me under the chandelier. He's always been jealous of me, envious of how close you and I have become. He's not. I said solemnly. He knows you and I are just friends. We're very much in love now, and he doesn't need to harm you to solidify our relationship. Love? Barton lowered his gaze, sneering softly as he murmured. You clearly dislike him, have been trying every means to divorce, how could you? Fall in love with him? No point in saying more, I stood up. Barton, you know best how things are. Arthur hasn't done anything, you can't frame him, the truth will come out sooner or later. As I reached the door, Barton stopped me. Summer, are we still friends? I sighed and shook my head. You brought this upon yourself. I closed the door behind me. Only Barton's crazed laughter and sobs scattered in the wind. Chapter 20. My speculation was correct. Arthur's people found out that Barton had taken out a huge insurance policy on himself. If something happened to him, or if he was harmed, the insurance company would pay him a large sum of money. Additionally, someone took pictures of him coming in and out of an underground casino. Although he disguised himself, a little inquiry would confirm it was him. Just as Arthur was preparing to tell the police about these things, he received a call from them first. Someone voluntarily confessed, admitting that the whole thing was her doing and had nothing to do with Arthur. Is it Verna? Arthur's eyes widened. How did you know? I smiled bitterly. Perhaps only someone like her, who loves Barton blindly, would go as far as taking the blame. So, you mean it wasn't her? I shrugged. I don't know, just saw her at the hospital that day. Even if she harbors resentment out of love, the target is unlikely to be Barton. Then who could it be? I covered Arthur's inquisitive eyes. Who cares, love whoever. Hurry up and get ready, I miss home. Upon returning, life returned to normal. However, that unsettled feeling in my heart never dissipated. Recently, Arthur has been burning the midnight oil for work. I've been tirelessly trying to convince him to balance work and rest, putting in extra effort, getting myself worked up. I often oversleep in the mornings. One day, waking up, I found myself alone at home. There was a message from Arthur on my phone. Darling, if you're too tired, don't come to the office, rest at home. Thinking about how Arthur just has random lunches when I'm not around. I quickly got up. Before leaving, I received a call from Barton. After hesitating for a moment, I answered. Summer, are you still mad at me? What's the matter? My voice carried a layer of coldness. Barton sneered. Can't I call you if there's nothing wrong? I'm a bit busy. If there's nothing, I'll hang up. Summer, if you choose Arthur, don't blame me. His icy tone cut me off, then he hung up. Feeling uneasy, I contacted Arthur. Be careful of Barton, I suspect he might harm you. Okay, where are you? I'll send someone to pick you up. I just left. Someone covered my mouth and nose from behind, and I passed out. Chapter 21. When I woke up, my hands and feet were tied, a cloth stuffed in my mouth. I surveyed the surroundings. My heart felt like it was in an ice cave. The kidnapping had indeed happened. The kidnapper's voice was fierce. Your wife is in my hands. If you don't want her to die, comply with our demands for ransom. The address will be sent to you later. If you dare to call the police, get ready for your wife's funeral. Even the threatening words were identical. No, Arthur couldn't come. They didn't want money, they wanted his life. Tears fell uncontrollably out of my desperation, unable to think of a way to stop him. Summer, are you crying for Arthur? I turned my head towards Barton, who was slowly approaching me. He was playing with a dagger in his hand. The chilling gleam cut through me. Indeed, he's about to die. He squatted down, removing the cloth from my mouth. Why you? At least before he falsely accused Arthur, I truly considered him a friend. Because of you, Summer. He harshly held my chin. If it weren't for you falling in love with Arthur, ignoring me, would I have gotten into gambling? Have you ever been chased by loan sharks for debts? Have you ever felt cornered and had no choice but to self-destruct? I looked at him as if he were a stranger. So you framed Arthur and used Verna's love to help you cover everything? Barton admitted it. It was all his doing. Including this kidnapping. Summer, someone wanted to get rid of Arthur, I just came up with a more entertaining way to help him. Don't you think you and Arthur are deeply in love? If only one of you could survive, who would you choose? I was stunned. It turns out he was also part of my past life. I spat at him. You lunatic, pervert, this time you won't harm Arthur, I won't let you succeed. Fine. Barton grinned, but there was no trace of amusement in his eyes. I'll be watching. As he finished speaking, the door was kicked open. Arthur walked in heavily, his gaze sharp. Release Summer. What about the money? One of the kidnappers asked. Arthur pointed to the briefcase in his hand. Release her first. Let's check the money first. A kidnapper pressed the gun against my forehead. Arthur hesitated. Slowly, he squatted down, opened the briefcase. Just as he turned the box around, several police officers launched an attack from somewhere, quickly subdued the kidnappers and Barton. Arthur, ignoring everything else, came over to help me up and untie me. After a frantic checkup, he hugged me tightly. It's over, sweetheart. It's all over. I nodded in joy. Yes, it's over. Since they were caught on the spot, Barton and the others couldn't escape. To lessen their punishment, they revealed the mastermind behind them, Kyle. They would all face legal consequences. Later, I learned from Arthur himself. After hearing about the ending of our past life, he had installed a tracking device on my phone. When the kidnappers called him, he and the police were already on their way. He didn't act passively like in our past life. Because in this life, just like me, he wanted to hold each other's hand and grow old together. Chapter 22. Because he is the heir of the Harris family, life is not always smooth sailing for Arthur. The news of Arthur's birthmark fading away was leaked online. Someone compared his past photos with current ones. Hashtag CEO Harris suspected of plastic surgery. Hashtag CEO Arthur, the beauty hindered by a birthmark. Hashtag. Several hot searches were related to his face. I ran to the study holding my phone to show Arthur. The internet is going crazy. Arthur glanced briefly. Let it spread, I didn't have plastic surgery. I was born beautiful. I burst into laughter, vain. Straightening up, I lifted my eyelids. I saw a familiar box placed on the highest shelf of the bookcase. I tiptoed to reach it. Didn't you throw away these cufflinks? Arthur moved over from the computer, his dark eyes sparkling. Anyway, this was the first gift you gave me. I couldn't bear to throw it away. I rubbed the red corners of Arthur's eyes. Poor thing, sister pities you. Sister was too mean to you before. Trust me, I'll give you something more worthwhile. I lifted Arthur's chin and kissed him thoughtfully. After the kiss, he smiled wryly. Summer, the more worthwhile gift you mentioned, isn't it yourself? I blushed and turned my face away. What are you thinking? He pulled me close. Well, it's not impossible. After all, having you is enough. We kissed again, getting lost in each other's tender embrace, unable to break free.
Extra, Arthur. Chapter 1. I never thought I could truly have summer one day. But when that day truly arrived, I was unwilling to let go. Chapter 2. I know I am ugly and unworthy of her beauty. Originally, I just wanted to help her family get through tough times. I heard a friend's suggestion about marrying into the family. I felt greedy. If I can't win her heart in this lifetime, having the person who got her isn't a bad alternative. Chapter 3. Summer has a male friend. They've been childhood friends. Although Summer never said she liked him. From the way that man looks at her, and how he takes care of her, I know he is my rival, a strong one at that. After Summer and I got married, her attitude towards me was always cold. Is she blaming me for breaking up her and that man? If it weren't for me, would he be the one marrying her? I dare not think about it. I have made it clear to her. As long as she doesn't divorce me, she can do whatever she wants with that man. I will allow it. Chapter 4. I didn't expect Summer to show up. She was so fierce before leaving, saying she wouldn't come. I observed around, she came alone. Her eyes were red as soon as she arrived. Is she trying to embarrass me in front of so many people? Forget it. Let her be happy. Since the moment I set my heart on her, I knew I will always be trapped by her. Chapter 5. Summer's warmth today surprised and unsettled me. Is she testing me, or is there a price to pay? She said she likes me. Ridiculous. It's equally ridiculous that she says she will never like me. I'm so pathetic. Even if I know it might be a lie, I'm willingly deceived. Chapter 6. I knew there would be issues. The gift was used by that man. No wonder he was so kind to give it to me. Spending my money? Staring at the gift box in the trash can. Still couldn't resist picking it back up. This was the first gift she ever gave me. And she said she didn't know about it beforehand. I should believe her. She wouldn't need to lie to me for this. Let's trust her again this time. Chapter 7. I probably made the right bet. Summer didn't lie to me. Days are sweet and fulfilling. That man is no longer lingering around. Summer even said I'd become more handsome. Indeed, since love started nourishing us, the birthmark we were tired of disappeared. Turns out this wasn't a birthmark. It was a curse of love. It must be resolved with true love. How lucky. I got it. Chapter 8. Summer didn't sound right on the phone, so I immediately checked her location and contacted the police to go. I don't know what kind of mindset I had in her previous life. But in this life, I want to be with her forever. And I promised her I won't let anything happen to either of us. Chapter 9. After Summer took away that cufflink that day, she never returned it. Valentine's Day. The company is filled with the bittersweet taste of love. The scent of roses fills the air. I absent-mindedly turn my phone on and off. Summer disappeared early in the morning. At this point, there's no sign of her, no calls, no messages. Lunch was just a sandwich to get through, then back to work. But I couldn't focus. Chapter 10. Lost in thought, a bunch of red roses burst into my office. Surprise! Summer peeked out from behind the flowers. I held back a smile. You ran off early in the morning just for this? Aha! She set the flowers down and came over to me. Close your eyes, stretch out your left hand. I did as she said. Soon, I felt a cool sensation on my ring finger. I half opened my eye. She had put a ring on my finger. Chapter 11. Do you like it? She asked while showing me her left hand. It's for couples, and it's engraved too. Yours is engraved with my name, mine with yours. She gazed at me expectantly. Her eyes seemed to be filled with spring water, stirring my heart. I couldn't help but kiss her, reluctant to let go. The first gift I've given you, are you satisfied? I nodded, satisfied. But what about the cufflink? She waved her hand. Dealt with. Let's pretend it never existed. It's fine, we didn't lose anything. The money for this ring was exchanged for it. I was half believing, half doubting. How did you manage that? A mountain person has their own ways. Later, I accidentally saw the cufflinks on my father-in-law's shirt. I asked where they came from. He said my mother-in-law bought them for $1.5 million from Summer to give to him. I was speechless. Chapter 12. Let's go. Summer grabbed my hand and started to walk out. Where are we going? It's not time to get off work yet. She pouted. Of course, we have to go on a date for Valentine's Day. Aren't you the domineering CEO? Why are you working? I smiled helplessly. Even a domineering CEO is human, and even a domineering CEO has to earn money to support the family. Is the work on your hands very urgent? I checked. Not really. Then take the day off today, and I'll accompany you to work overtime on the weekend. She must have prepared something special. I couldn't resist her. I agreed without principles. With her, I really couldn't refuse. As a result, she took my hand and led me out, loudly announcing, Valentine's Day holiday. The whole room cheered, Hail Summer. She emerged as the big winner. Seeing her smile so brightly, everything around seemed to pale in comparison. Only she radiated infinite light, shining into the future that should have been lonely and dark for me.